Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in the giant meeting hall on Nexus Prime, trying not to look bored. Around her, hundreds of alien beings talked in their strange languages through translation devices. Some looked like giant crystals that sang instead of speaking. Others were clouds of gas floating in clear containers. A few looked almost human, but with too many eyes or arms in the wrong places. Elena had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Confederation for 3 years now. 3 long years of sitting in these meetings while the alien races politely ignored her. They called humans observers, which was a nice way of saying they thought Earth people were too stupid to have real opinions about galaxy-wide decisions. The Galactic Confederation was huge. It had 847 different alien species spread across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Some of these races had been traveling between stars for millions of years. They had technology that seemed like magic to humans. They could build cities that floated in space and create energy from nothing. But they treated humans like children who had just learned to walk. Elena watched as the Zephyrians, who looked like living diamonds, discussed trade routes with musical sounds that hurt her ears. The Ethereals, floating gas clouds with glowing centers, debated something about mining rights in a voice that sounded like wind through caves. The Technari, half machine and half biological creatures, calculated resource distributions with mathematical precision that made Elena's head spin. Nobody asked for Earth's opinion. Nobody cared what the newest members of galactic civilization thought about anything important. Elena had studied all these races before coming here. The Zephyrians were the oldest known species in the galaxy. They had been building starships when humans were still learning to make fire. The Ethereals claimed to have existed since the galaxy was young, floating between stars like cosmic ghosts. The Technari had turned themselves into living computers thousands of years ago, making decisions based on pure logic and mathematics. All of them looked at humans as if they were pets who had somehow learned to use spaceships. The meeting was about the usual boring stuff: trade agreements, territorial boundaries, scientific research sharing. Elena took notes that nobody would ever read and tried to stay awake. She thought about her apartment back on Earth, her dog Max, and whether she had made the right choice accepting this job. Then everything changed. A sound like screaming metal filled the hall. Red lights flashed everywhere. The translation devices went crazy, switching between languages so fast that Elena could barely understand anything. Alien beings jumped up from their seats, making sounds of fear and confusion. Admiral Korth 9, the Technari military leader, moved to the center of the hall. Its metal and flesh body gleamed under the emergency lights. When it spoke, its voice cut through the noise like a sword. "Emergency situation confirmed," Admiral Korth 9 announced. "Long-range sensors have detected movement in the dark space beyond our galaxy." The hall went completely silent. Elena had never seen aliens look scared before, but now she could feel fear radiating from every being in the room. "The Devourers have awakened," the Admiral continued. Elena had read about the Devourers in the historical files Earth had been given when joining the Confederation. They were mentioned in the oldest records, described as monsters from the time before civilization. Most human scholars thought they were myths, stories told to scare young aliens around campfires. Apparently, they were real. Admiral Korth 9 activated a holographic display that showed the edge of the galaxy. Millions of red dots appeared in the empty space beyond the last stars. Each dot represented a ship, but these weren't normal ships. The display showed organic-looking vessels that seemed to be alive, growing and changing as Elena watched. "Initial scans indicate approximately 4 million hostile vessels," the Admiral reported. "Biomechanical composition, consistent with historical records of Devourer technology. Estimated time to reach populated systems, 6 months. Chaos erupted. In the hall again. Alien beings began shouting in their various languages. Some rushed toward the exits. Others activated communication devices, probably calling their homeworlds with the terrible news. Elena accessed the historical files about the Devourers through her personal device. What she read made her stomach feel sick. The Devourers were described as living ships that ate entire star systems. They absorbed technology, consumed planets, and left nothing behind but empty space. They had attacked the galaxy before, millions of years ago, destroying entire civilizations before mysteriously disappearing into the dark space between galaxies. The records said they were impossible to fight because they learned from every battle, adapting their technology to counter whatever weapons were used against them. They didn't just destroy planets, they consumed them, turning matter and energy into more devourer ships. Admiral Korth 9 was still talking, but Elena could barely focus on the words. The Admiral mentioned evacuation protocols, defensive positions, and strategic withdrawals. The plan seemed to be hiding and hoping the devourers would go away. Elena looked around the hall at the panicking aliens. These were the most advanced races in the galaxy, beings with technology beyond human imagination, and they were talking about running away. The Zephyrians began singing what sounded like funeral songs. The ethereals started glowing brighter, which Elena had learned meant they were extremely agitated. The Technari were calculating frantically, their machine parts clicking and whirring as they processed impossible amounts of data. Elena stood up. She didn't plan to speak, but something inside her couldn't stay quiet. Earth stands ready to assist. In any capacity, she said. The hall fell silent again. Hundreds of alien eyes, sensors, and detection organs turned toward her. Elena felt very small and very human under all that attention. Some of the aliens made sounds that she recognized as laughter. Others looked at her with what seemed like pity. The Zephyrian representative made a crystal chime that the translator interpreted as "how quaint." Admiral Korth 9's mechanical voice responded with mathematical precision. Human military capabilities are insufficient for large-scale defensive operations. Suggest focusing on evacuation assistance for low priority. Colony worlds. Elena felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but she stayed standing. We'll do whatever we can to help. More alien laughter echoed through the hall. Elena heard whispered translations. The children want to play soldier, and how adorable, they think they can fight. The meeting broke apart after that. Alien representatives hurried out to contact their governments. Emergency committees formed to coordinate the galaxy-wide evacuation. Defense fleets began moving toward outer rim positions. Elena walked slowly back to her small office, thinking about what had just happened. Earth had been part of the Galactic Confederation for 50 years, but they had always been treated like junior members who needed protection. Now the greatest threat in galactic history was coming, and the advanced alien races were planning to run away. She sat down at her desk and opened a secure communication channel to Earth. The message would take 3 days to reach home through the quantum relay stations, but it was important to send it immediately. Elena typed carefully. Priority Alpha message to Terran Defense Council. Galactic emergency confirmed. Ancient hostile force approaching with overwhelming numbers. Confederation. Planning evacuation and defensive withdrawal. Official assessment. Human assistance considered negligible. Personal assessment. This may be humanity's first real test on the galactic stage. Recommend immediate strategic planning session. We may be the only species crazy enough to fight instead of run. She sent the message and sat back in her chair, staring out the window at the alien city stretching below. Somewhere in the dark space beyond the galaxy, millions of hostile ships were heading toward every living world in the Confederation. The galaxy's most advanced races were preparing to hide. Elena wondered what humanity would choose to do. The message from Ambassador Vasquez reached Earth 3 days later and immediately set off alarms across the planet. President Chen Wei was eating breakfast in Beijing when her security chief burst into her private dining room with a tablet showing Elena's urgent communication. How bad is it? President Chen asked, setting down her coffee cup. According to our ambassador, the galaxy is about to be invaded by something called the Devourers. 4 million hostile ships, and the aliens are planning to run away and hide, the security chief replied. President Chen read the full message twice. Then she activated the emergency communication system that connected her directly to military leaders around the world. Within 2 hours, Earth's most important people were gathered in the underground war room beneath Geneva. General Marcus Steele, the head of Earth's military forces, stood at the front of the room looking at the data that had arrived from Elena. His gray hair was perfectly neat despite being woken up at 3 in the morning, and his uniform was spotless. Elena's message was displayed on the wall behind him. "Ladies and gentlemen," General Steele began, "we have a problem, but I think we also have an opportunity." The room was filled with Earth's military leaders, scientists, and government officials. They had all read the emergency briefing, but most of them looked confused rather than scared. "The Galactic Confederation has been treating us like children for 50 years, General Steele continued. "They think humans are too primitive to contribute anything meaningful to galactic civilization. They've shared their basic technology with us, but they've never taken us seriously as equals." President Chen nodded. "What exactly are you suggesting, Marcus?" General Steele smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a professional soldier who had been waiting his whole career for a real war. "I'm suggesting that maybe it's time to show them what humans do best," he said. "We've been studying their technology and their tactics for 50 years. We've learned how they think, how they fight, and how they make decisions. And do you know what we've discovered?" The room was completely silent. "They don't know how to fight a real war," General Steele said. "They've been at peace for so long that they've forgotten what warfare actually means. Their military tactics are formal, predictable, and based on maintaining minimal casualties. They fight like they're playing a chess game where both sides know all the rules." Dr. Sarah Kim, Earth's chief military scientist, raised her hand. "The data shows that these devourers have been dormant for millions of years. The last time they attacked, they destroyed entire civilizations. How can you be so confident?" General Steele activated another display. This one showed Earth's military capabilities, not the ships and weapons that the Confederation knew about, but the real ones that humanity had been building in secret. "Because we've been preparing for exactly this kind of war since we first made contact with the aliens," he said. "While they thought we were playing with their hand-me-down technology, we were adapting it, improving it, and building weapons that they can't imagine." The display showed orbital shipyards that had been disguised as civilian facilities, manufacturing plants that looked like research centers, training programs that appeared to be exploration missions. For 50 years, humanity had been quietly preparing for galactic-scale warfare while pretending to be peaceful observers. "The Confederation races have been safe for so long that they've lost their fighting instincts," General Steele explained. "But humans have been at war with each other for our entire history. We know how to fight when our backs are against the wall. We know how to adapt, improvise, and win against impossible odds." Admiral Sarah Morrison, Earth's youngest fleet commander, stood up. She was only 35 years old, but she had never lost a military exercise or simulation. Her fellow officers called her Reaper because she could destroy enemy forces so efficiently. "What kind of response are you planning?" Admiral Morrison asked. General Steele grinned. "Total mobilization. Everything we have, everything we can build, and everything we can steal, borrow, or improvise. The aliens are expecting us to contribute. A small symbolic force that stays out of the way. Instead, we're going to deploy our entire military capability." President Chen frowned. "That sounds incredibly risky. If we lose everything in this fight, Earth will be defenseless." "With respect, Madam President, if we don't fight, there won't be an Earth to defend," General Steele replied. "The devourers don't take prisoners or leave survivors. They consume everything. Our choice isn't between safety and risk. It's between fighting and extinction." The room erupted in discussion. Some officials argued for caution, suggesting that Earth should follow the Confederation's lead and focus on evacuation. Others supported General Steele's aggressive approach. The debate continued for hours. Finally, President Chen called for silence. "I need to understand something," she said. "Marcus, you're talking about committing humanity's entire military force to a war against an enemy that has terrorized the galaxy for millions of years. What makes you think we can succeed where advanced alien civilizations failed?" General Steele walked to the center of the room. "Because we're not trying to beat them at their own game. We're going to change the rules entirely." He activated a new display showing human military doctrine compared to Confederation tactics. The alien approach was formal, hierarchical, and focused on maintaining superior technology and minimal losses. The human approach was chaotic, adaptive, and focused on winning at any cost. Every human soldier trains for multiple combat roles, General Steele explained. Every pilot can handle different types of ships. Every officer learns to make decisions independently when communication breaks down. We don't fight like a machine with predictable parts. We fight like a living organism that adapts to survive. Admiral Morrison added, "Our ships are designed for modularity and field modification. If something breaks, we fix it with whatever materials we have available. If our weapons don't work, we improvise new ones. If our tactics aren't effective, we change them in the middle of battle." Dr. Kim looked at the technical specifications on the display. These devourers adapt by absorbing enemy technology and learning from their tactics. How do we fight an enemy that becomes stronger every time we engage them? By being unpredictable, General Steele replied. By fighting in ways they've never seen before. By using their own adaptability against them. President Chen made her decision. How long do you need to prepare? Our ships are already being loaded with supplies and ammunition, Admiral Morrison said. Our crews have been training for scenarios exactly like this for the past 10 years. We can launch the first wave within 72 hours. And the aliens? President Chen asked. What do we tell the Confederation? General Steele smiled again. We tell them that humanity is ready to contribute to the defense of galactic civilization. We just don't tell them how much we're contributing until it's too late for them to stop us. The meeting ended with Earth's leadership committed to the most dangerous military operation in human history. While the Confederation prepared evacuation, plans and defensive positions humanity would mobilize for total war. Admiral Morrison left the meeting to begin deploying the Terran Navy. General Steele coordinated with manufacturing centers around the world to increase weapons production. Dr. Kim initiated protocols to adapt Confederation technology for human warfare tactics. Within 24 hours, every human military base on Earth and in the colonies was buzzing with activity. Ships that had been disguised as civilian vessels revealed their true nature as advanced warships. Soldiers who had trained as peacekeepers prepared for the most violent conflict in galactic history. The message that Admiral Morrison sent back to Ambassador Vasquez was simple. Tell them humanity is coming. Tell them we're bringing everything we have. And tell them to get out of our way when the shooting starts. Earth was going to war and the galaxy was about to discover what humans really were. The first battle happened at Kepler 442, a small star system on the edge of Confederation space. Long-range sensors had detected the Devourer advance force, 10,000 biomechanical ships that moved through space like a swarm of metallic locusts. To the Confederation Military Command, 10,000 ships represented a catastrophic threat that would require their most careful defensive strategies. To Admiral Jack Thompson, commanding the Human Expeditionary Force, 10,000 enemy ships looked like a good warm-up exercise. The Confederation fleet had already positioned itself in standard defensive formation around Kepler 442's inhabited planet. Their ships formed neat geometric patterns that maximized fire coverage and minimized exposure to enemy attack. The Zephyrian crystal ships hummed in harmonic frequencies that would theoretically disrupt enemy targeting systems. The ethereal gas cloud vessels had arranged themselves to create overlapping energy shields. The Technari machine ships calculated optimal firing solutions and prepared to engage the enemy with mathematical precision. It was exactly the kind of organized, predictable defense that had worked for the Confederation for thousands of years. Then, the human ships arrived. Admiral Thompson's fleet didn't form neat geometric patterns. Instead, the human vessels spread out in loose, seemingly random formations that made the Confederation commanders nervous. Some ships moved independently, others grouped in small packs, and a few appeared to be deliberately positioning themselves in tactically dangerous locations. Captain Sarah Reaper Morrison, now commanding her own squadron, led 12 fighters in what looked like a completely insane flight pattern. Her ships darted between asteroids, used debris fields for cover, and maintained radio silence while approaching the outer edge of the system. Human fleet, please conform to established defensive grid. Admiral Korth 9 transmitted on the command frequency. Your current positions compromise optimal fire coordination. Admiral Thompson's response was brief. Negative Confederation command. We'll handle our own positioning. The Confederation officers exchanged what their species considered confused glances. In 3,000 years of joint military operations, no member species had ever refused to follow standard tactical doctrine. The Devourers arrived 6 hours later. The enemy ships emerged from hyperspace in a massive swarm formation that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years. The biomechanical vessels looked like a cross between insects and machines, their organic hulls pulsing with internal light, while mechanical appendages twitched with predatory anticipation. Each ship was different, adapted for specific combat roles, but all of them moved with the coordinated precision of a hive mind. The traditional Devourer strategy was simple and effective. Overwhelm the enemy with superior numbers, absorb their technology during the battle, and adapt to counter any weapons or tactics used against them. It had never failed. The Confederation fleet opened fire according to established protocols. Energy beams and projectile weapons targeted the largest enemy vessels while defensive screens prepared to absorb the expected counterattack. It was a textbook engagement that should have resulted in an organized fighting retreat while evacuating the planet's population. Instead, the human ships did something completely unexpected. They attacked. Captain Morrison's squadron emerged from the asteroid field at maximum acceleration, targeting not the largest Devourer ships but the smallest ones. Her fighters moved in unpredictable patterns that made it impossible for the enemy to track their movements or predict their next target. When Devourer ships tried to respond, Morrison's pilots were already somewhere else, hitting different targets from unexpected angles. Admiral Thompson's main fleet didn't maintain defensive positions. Instead, human vessels charged directly into the enemy formation, using their superior maneuverability to avoid the worst of the Devourer attack, while striking at close range where their weapons would be most effective. The battle quickly became chaos, and chaos was where humans excelled. Lieutenant Colonel Rosa Santos, commanding a Marine boarding unit aboard the destroyer Indomitable, watched through the ship's sensors as human tactics turned the battle into something the Devourers had never experienced before. They're trying to adapt to our attack patterns, her tactical officer reported, but they can't figure out what our patterns are. That's because we don't have patterns, Santos replied with satisfaction. We're making it up as we go along. The Devourers' greatest strength had always been their ability to learn from enemy tactics and adapt their response accordingly. But human tactics weren't based on predetermined strategies that could be analyzed and countered. Every human ship operated independently, making decisions based on immediate battlefield conditions rather than following rigid doctrines. When a group of Devourer ships surrounded Captain Morrison's squadron, she didn't retreat or call for reinforcement. Instead, she led her fighters directly through the enemy formation while her pilots ejected their fuel cells at precisely calculated intervals. The fuel cells exploded in sequence, creating a corridor of destruction that allowed Morrison's squadron to escape while simultaneously destroying 6 enemy vessels. It wasn't a maneuver that existed in any tactical manual. Morrison had invented it 30 seconds earlier. The Devourers tried their signature move, technological absorption. Biomechanical tendrils extended from their ships toward human vessels, attempting to integrate human technology into their own systems. This technique had allowed them to become stronger with every battle, turning enemy weapons against their creators. But human ships had been designed with this exact scenario in mind. When Devourer tendrils made contact with the human destroyer Defiant, the ship's modular systems automatically jettisoned the compromised sections. Instead of absorbing advanced human technology, the Devourers found themselves trying to integrate empty metal containers filled with high explosives. The explosion destroyed 3 Devourer ships and severely damaged 5 others. Captain Morrison's squadron made the breakthrough that changed everything. Her fighters had been harassing the enemy formation for 2 hours when she noticed something important. The Devourer ships were all connected through bioelectrical links that allowed them to coordinate their movements, Target the connection nodes, she transmitted to her squadron. Cut them off from each other. Human fighters, armed with precision weapons designed for surgical strikes, began severing the biological communication links between enemy ships. Individual devourer vessels, suddenly cut off from the hive mind, lost their coordination and began firing at random targets. Some of them started shooting at each other. Lieutenant Colonel Santos seized the opportunity to attempt something that had never been tried before: boarding a devourer ship. Her Marines launched from their transport in heavily armored suits, using magnetic grapples to attach themselves to the organic hull of a damaged enemy vessel. Cutting through the biomechanical armor took every piece of equipment Santos had brought. But her team finally breached the ship's interior. What they found inside was like nothing in their training manuals: corridors made of living metal, walls that pulsed with organic circulation systems, and control stations that appeared to be grown rather than built. The Devourer crew was even stranger. They looked like a combination of machine and biology, with metal components integrated directly into organic tissue. They moved with insect-like coordination and communicated through electrical signals rather than speech. But they died just like any other enemy when shot with human weapons. Santos and her Marines fought through the ship's organic corridors, learning as they went that human biochemical weapons were devastatingly effective against the Devourer's hybrid biology. Equipment designed for terrestrial warfare proved to be perfect for fighting an enemy that was part machine and part living organism. The boarding action lasted 40 minutes and ended with Santos's team capturing the ship's central control node. For the first time in galactic history, humans had intact Devourer technology to study. The Battle of Kepler 442 ended 8 hours after it began. Every single Devourer ship had been destroyed with minimal human casualties. The Confederation fleet, which had prepared for a fighting retreat, found themselves witnessing the complete annihilation of an enemy force that should have been overwhelming. Admiral Thompson's final transmission to Confederation Command was typically brief. Kepler 442 secure, enemy eliminated, send coordinates for next target. The galaxy began to understand that they had seriously underestimated humanity. Ambassador Vasquez, monitoring the battle from Nexus Prime, watched as Confederation officials struggled to comprehend what had just happened. The same alien races that had treated humans like primitive children were now demanding detailed reports about human military capabilities. The Zephyrians wanted to know how human ships could operate without harmonic coordination. The Ethereals couldn't understand how human tactics worked without predetermined strategies. The Technari requested complete technical specifications for human weapons and defensive systems. Elena smiled as she composed her response to their requests. Humanity is prepared to share our tactical innovations with any Confederation member who wishes to participate in active defense operations against the Devourer threat. News of humanity's victory at Kepler 442 spread across the galaxy faster than the quantum communication networks could carry it. Within days, every species in the Confederation was demanding information about the mysterious humans who had accomplished the impossible. Ambassador Elena Vasquez found herself at the center of galactic attention for the first time since arriving at Nexus Prime. Alien representatives who had barely acknowledged her existence were now requesting private meetings to discuss human military capabilities. The same beings who had treated her like a primitive observer were suddenly desperate to learn everything about Earth's technology and tactics. Elena sat in the Confederation Council chamber, no longer ignored in the back rows, but positioned at the center table where the most important decisions were made. Around her, the galaxy's most advanced races waited to hear what humanity had to offer. The question before this council, announced Admiral Korth 9, is how to integrate human tactical innovations into our overall defensive strategy against the Devourer threat. Elena stood up, and for the first time since joining the Confederation, the entire chamber fell silent to listen to what she had to say. With respect, Admiral, I think you're asking the wrong question, she began. You're not asking how to integrate our tactics, you're asking how to understand them. And the truth is, you can't understand them because they're based on something your species abandoned millions of years ago. The chamber buzzed with confused alien conversations. Elena continued before anyone could interrupt. Every species in this room has achieved peace through technological superiority and diplomatic cooperation. You've created a galaxy where wars are rare and violence is controlled. You've forgotten what it means to fight for survival against an enemy that wants to destroy everything you've ever built. She activated a holographic display showing Earth's history. Thousands of years of continuous warfare, technological development driven by military necessity, and civilizations that grew stronger through conflict rather than weaker. Humanity has never known peace, Elena said. We've been at war with ourselves, our environment, and everything that threatened our survival since we first learned to use tools. When you invited us to observe your peaceful civilization, we didn't see a model to copy. We saw weaknesses to exploit. The alien representatives exchanged what Elena had learned to recognize as expressions of shock and concern. She pressed on. For 50 years, while you thought we were playing with your discarded technology, we were studying you. We learned your languages, your customs, your military doctrines, and your weaknesses. We prepared for the day when your peaceful galaxy would need warriors who remembered how to fight. Admiral Korth 9's mechanical voice cut through the chamber noise. Are you saying that humanity deliberately concealed its military capabilities? Elena smiled. I'm saying that humanity prepared for galactic warfare while you prepared for galactic peace. Now the Devourers are here, and you need to decide whether you want to learn how to fight or continue planning your evacuation. The main Devourer fleet was still approaching, but human forces had begun engaging advance elements across a dozen star systems. Reports flowing into Confederation Command painted a picture that defied everything they thought they knew about warfare. Human ships operated independently, without central coordination or predetermined battle plans. Instead of following rigid tactical doctrines, they adapted to each engagement based on immediate battlefield conditions. Human commanders made decisions that seemed reckless or suicidal, but consistently produced victory against overwhelming odds. Captain Sarah Morrison, now promoted to Commodore, had become something of a legend throughout the galaxy. Her ghost squadron appeared without warning, struck with devastating effectiveness and vanished before enemy forces could respond. Each attack was different, unpredictable, and specifically designed to exploit weaknesses that the Devourers didn't know they had. At the Battle of Proxima Station, Morrison's squadron had used the station's own defensive systems against the attacking Devourers. Instead of defending the installation, human fighters had deliberately lured enemy ships into the station's automated fire zones, turning defensive weapons into offensive traps. At the asteroid belt engagement near Wolf 359, human forces had weaponized the asteroid field itself. Pilots used precisely calculated explosions to turn space rocks into kinetic projectiles, creating a debris storm that destroyed enemy ships while providing cover for human attacks. The Devourers were learning to adapt to human tactics, but the adaptation process was being overwhelmed by the speed and creativity of human innovation. Every time the enemy developed a counter to human strategies, human commanders invented completely new approaches that made their previous adaptations useless. Dr. Kenji Tanaka, Earth's leading xenobiologist, was working with captured Devourer technology in a secret research facility orbiting Jupiter. His team had made discoveries that shocked even the most advanced Confederation scientists. The Devourers aren't just machines, Dr. Tanaka reported to Earth Command. They're not just biological organisms either. They're something completely new, a hybrid technology that combines the best aspects of both approaches. His research showed that Devourer ships were essentially living creatures with mechanical enhancements. They could heal damage, adapt to new threats, and reproduce by consuming raw materials and energy. Each ship was connected to the others through biological communication networks that functioned like a massive brain distributed across space. But they have a weakness, Dr. Tanaka continued. Their hybrid nature means they're vulnerable to attacks that target the connection between their biological and mechanical systems. Human scientists, working with information gathered from boarding actions and captured enemy vessels, developed weapons specifically designed to exploit this weakness. Biological viruses that attacked organic components, electromagnetic pulses that disrupted mechanical systems, chemical agents that interfered with the biomechanical integration that gave devourer ships their unique capabilities. The war's character began to change as human innovations spread throughout the galaxy. Confederation species that had been planning evacuation procedures started requesting human military advisors. Alien fleets that had prepared for defensive withdrawal began adopting human offensive tactics. Admiral Jack Thompson found himself commanding not just human forces but mixed fleets that included Confederation vessels operating under human tactical doctrine. The combination of alien technology with human strategy proved devastatingly effective against devourer forces. The Battle of Binary Stars at Castor Pollux became the largest space engagement in galactic history. Admiral Thompson coordinated 18 different fleets from 7 Confederation species in a complex operation that used the binary star system's gravitational fields as weapons. Human forces herded massive devourer formations into carefully calculated orbital patterns that brought enemy ships close to both stars simultaneously. The gravitational stress tore apart ships that had survived direct weapons fire. Solar radiation, focused and directed through human-designed collector systems, turned the stars themselves into massive weapons platforms. The battle lasted 18 hours and ended with over 500,000 devourer ships destroyed. But the cost was enormous. Human casualties mounted as Earth's fleet was reduced to fewer than 800 operational vessels. Alien ships operating under human command suffered losses that shocked Confederation leaders who had never experienced large-scale warfare. Yet the survivors had learned something important. The devourers could be beaten. The enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years was not invincible. They could adapt to any single tactical approach, but they couldn't adapt fast enough to counter the continuous innovation that human commanders brought to every engagement. The breakthrough came when human intelligence officers analyzing communication intercepts from destroyed devourer ships discovered something that changed the entire nature of the war. "They have a command center," reported Major Lisa, Park Earth's chief intelligence analyst. "All devourer forces are coordinated through a central hub, a massive mothership that processes information from every individual vessel and transmits tactical updates across the entire fleet." The implications were staggering. Destroy the command center, and the entire devourer invasion would collapse into uncoordinated fragments that could be defeated piecemeal. But the command center was protected by the largest concentration of enemy forces ever recorded. Over 1,000,000 devourer ships arranged in concentric defensive formations around a vessel the size of a small moon. Admiral Thompson studied the intelligence reports with growing excitement rather than concern. While Confederation strategists calculated the impossibility of penetrating such massive defenses, human military minds saw an opportunity. "They've made a mistake," Thompson told his staff. "They've concentrated their entire command structure in one location, protected by fixed defenses. They're fighting like they have something to lose." The final phase of the war would require everything humanity had left. Every ship, every weapon, every tactical innovation they had developed. But it would also require something more: the willingness to sacrifice. The Devourer Command Center was hidden deep within the Magellan Nebula, a region of space so dense with cosmic dust and electromagnetic interference that most ships couldn't navigate it safely. Long-range sensors were useless. Communication systems failed randomly, and the swirling gases created gravitational anomalies that could tear apart unwary vessels. It was the perfect place to hide something you never wanted anyone to find. Admiral Jack Thompson stood on the bridge of his flagship, Defiance, studying the tactical displays that showed humanity's remaining forces. After months of continuous warfare, Earth's once mighty fleet had been reduced to fewer than 600 operational ships. Many of those were damaged, running on improvised repairs and spare parts cannibalized from destroyed vessels. The Confederation had lost even more ships, but they also had billions of citizens safely evacuated to defensive positions throughout the galaxy. Humanity had nowhere to retreat. If Operation Broken Arrow failed, Earth would be defenseless against any surviving devourer force. "Admiral," reported Captain Sarah Morrison, now serving as Thompson's tactical coordinator. Final ship counts are coming in. We have 587 operational vessels, plus another 200 civilian ships that have been armed and equipped for combat operations. Thompson nodded grimly. The civilian ships included everything from cargo haulers to research vessels, hastily modified with weapons and armor. Even Earth's orbital defense stations had been stripped down and converted into mobile weapons platforms. Humanity was bringing literally everything they had to this final battle. What about our secret weapons? Thompson asked. Dr. Kenji Tanaka, whose research team had been working around the clock for weeks, stepped forward with a tablet full of technical specifications. The biological warfare packages are ready for deployment. We've created 17 different viral agents that target specific aspects of devourer biomechanical integration. Their hybrid nature makes them vulnerable to attacks that pure machines or pure organisms would resist. And the psychological warfare protocols? Captain Morrison smiled grimly. We've identified the frequencies used by devourer communication networks. Our signals intelligence people have developed transmission packages designed to disrupt their hive mind coordination. It won't destroy them, but it should create enough confusion to give us tactical advantages. Thompson looked out at the swirling gases of the Magellan Nebula. Somewhere in that cosmic storm, over 1 million enemy ships were waiting in defensive formation around their command center. The largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, protecting the brain that controlled the entire devourer invasion. Final communication check, Thompson ordered. I want every human ship, every Confederation vessel, and every civilian volunteer to hear this. The communication officer nodded. All frequencies open, Admiral. You're transmitting to the entire Allied fleet. Thompson activated his personal communicator and spoke into the device that would carry his words to nearly 1,000 ships and their crews. This is Admiral Thompson. In approximately 6 hours, we will enter the Magellan Nebula and engage the largest enemy force in galactic history. The odds against us are approximately 1,500 to 1. Most military strategists would consider this operation suicide. He paused, letting that sink in before continuing. But we're not most military strategists. We're humans. We've spent our entire history fighting impossible odds and winning through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. Today we're not just fighting for Earth or for humanity. We're fighting for every living being in the galaxy. Thompson looked around his bridge at the officers who had served with him throughout the war. They looked tired, scared, and determined. The Confederation races have technology we can barely understand. They've mastered sciences that seem like magic to us. But they never learned the one thing that humans excel at: how to win a war that can't be won through superior technology or careful strategy. The communication channels were silent except for the background static of space. We win by being unpredictable. We win by adapting faster than our enemies can respond. We win by being willing to sacrifice everything for the chance to save everyone else. And most importantly, we win by remembering that sometimes the right thing to do is also the crazy thing to do. Thompson smiled, and somehow his confidence carried across the communication network to every ship in the Allied fleet. Today, we're going to teach the galaxy what the human spirit really means. All ships prepare for final approach. Broken Arrow is now active. The assault on the Magellan Nebula began with humanity's ultimate deception. Instead of the massive, frontal attack that devourer strategists expected, human forces split into dozens of small groups that approached from different vectors. Some groups were real attack forces. Others were decoys broadcasting false sensor signatures. A few were actually unmanned drone ships controlled by artificial intelligence programs. The devourers had prepared for human unpredictability, but they had underestimated just how chaotic human tactics could become. Captain Morrison led the first wave in her modified fighter, diving through layers of cosmic dust, while devourer sensors tried to track targets that appeared and disappeared like ghosts in the nebula. Her squadron's job was to locate the exact position of the command center and transmit its coordinates to the main assault force. But Morrison had other plans. "Ghost Squadron, this is Reaper," she transmitted to her pilots. "We've got visual confirmation. On the target. I'm seeing the biggest devourer ship ever built, surrounded by defensive formations that stretch for thousands of kilometers." The command center was indeed massive. a biomechanical construct that looked like a cross between a space station and a living creature. Organic tubes and mechanical structures extended in all directions, creating a network that connected to every Devourer ship in the defensive formation. Reaper, this is Admiral Thompson. Transmit coordinates and return to base. Do not engage the target. Morrison grinned and switched off her communication system. She had learned human military tactics, too well to follow orders that made no tactical sense. Ghost Squadron, follow my lead, we're going in. 24 human fighters dove directly into the heart of the enemy formation, weaving between massive Devourer ships that tried unsuccessfully to track their movements. Morrison's plan was insane even by human standards. Penetrate the defensive perimeter, locate the command center's primary communication hub, and disable it with a surgical strike. The battle that followed became legendary throughout the galaxy. Morrison's fighters, outnumbered by thousands to one, used their superior maneuverability and unpredictable tactics to avoid destruction while striking at critical system nodes. They turned the enemy's massive size against them, using large Devourer ships as cover while attacking smaller vessels from unexpected angles. Meanwhile, Admiral Thompson's main assault force engaged the outer defensive formations with everything they had. Human ships, Confederation vessels, and improvised civilian craft fought together in a chaotic battle that defied every principle of organized warfare. The breakthrough came when Dr. Tanaka's biological weapons proved devastatingly effective. Viral agents designed to target Devourer biomechanical systems spread rapidly through enemy formations, causing ships to malfunction or attack their own allies. The enemy's greatest strength, their interconnected nature, became their greatest weakness as human-designed viruses propagated through their communication networks. But the cost was enormous. Human ships were destroyed faster than Thompson could count. Brave crews sacrificed themselves in ramming attacks that cleared paths for other vessels. The civilian volunteers, who had never trained for combat, fought with desperate courage against enemies that should have been impossible to defeat. Captain Morrison's squadron reached the command center's primary hub just as Admiral Thompson made his final decision. All ships, this is Thompson. The mission has succeeded, but we're not going to survive long enough to enjoy the victory. I'm ordering all remaining vessels to ram the command center simultaneously. It's been an honor serving with all of you. Thompson's flagship Defiance was critically damaged, its engines failing and its weapons systems offline. But it still had enough power for one last maneuver. The Admiral set course directly for the command center's primary structure while transmitting humanity's final gift to the galaxy: complete tactical and strategic data from every battle they had fought. This is Admiral Thompson to all Confederation forces, he transmitted as his ship accelerated toward the target. We've shown you how to fight. Now show us how to win. But Thompson's sacrifice had an unexpected effect. His example inspired every other species in the combined fleet to abandon their cautious tactics and fight with human determination. Zephyrian crystal ships, instead of maintaining safe distances, charged into close combat where their harmonic weapons were most effective. Ethereal gas cloud vessels used their ability to phase through solid matter to attack Devourer ships from the inside. Technari machine ships calculated optimal sacrifice maneuvers and executed them with mathematical precision. The command center fell not to human weapons alone, but to a united galaxy fighting with human courage. Captain Morrison, her fighter damaged but still operational, transmitted,